Hi there, Jane Krause online. I'm going to be joined by folks from the Oregon Virtual School District to be talking about Google Classroom and how it can be used in support of project management in PBL. So we're just waiting for people to join us, and this will be broadcast live and also available on YouTube.
It does.
Hello.
It's going to be really noisy in here for right now. I'm Heather.
Hi, Heather.
And JP's over here to my right, but he's talking to somebody. So
Okay, well, I'm glad you could join us. And Jeremy, you're with us?
Say hello.
Hi, Jane. How are you?
Hi there. Nice to see
Oh,
you.
there's Jeremy. Jeremy. So we do have a hangout going on here.
Yeah, I'm glad you could join us.
We do have a hangout, so I don't know if we want to
Hi, Heather.
put it up there once we get cut, but I'm going to go into the other room.
Well, I thought if you add me as we had it,
Okay. Well, I can
I'll just project up there.
Okay.
What's your favorite sport?
Hi, Cindy.
Is that Cindy? Hi, Cindy.
I have to get out of that noisy room for a second. So I'm with the Southern Oregon ESD EdTech cadre right now, and we have a lot of people who probably have some expertise that they could share.
Right.
So I can get this streamed up or to our projector, and we can have everybody involved, or we can do this any way you want.
Well, it'd be great to have whether people want to contribute or they think they'll get something from the conversation. I'd love to have everybody join. So.
Okay. Well, I think what I'm going to do is send this link to Virginia.
Uh-huh.
And then I'm going to have her connect us up onto the big screen,
Okay.
and we'll go from there. So I'll sign off for a few minutes, and then we'll be back.
Okay, thanks.
Alrighty.
So, Heather, how are you?
I'm good.
Good.
Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, how are you?
Good to see you again.
And Jeremy, where are you based?
I'm in Redmond.
Redmond.
I'm Director of Technology and Innovation for Redmond School District.
Okay. And Cindy?
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I am the Technology Development Coordinator for Salem-Keizer Public Schools.
And are you from Albany?
I am.
Yeah, I thought I noted that. Yeah. So Jeremy is at Redmond.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And are you all Oregon Virtual School District coaches? I'm not sure how you refer to yourselves.
Team members.
Team members.
Yeah.
Well, when Heather gets back on, I think we'll just launch in because I'm hoping that we'll be joined by a fellow named Jared Cavelli. He wrote Going Google, which is a Corwin title. He works for kind of in similar positions to you folks, I think, in Utah. And he and I are working on a project together. I'll describe it a little more, but we're hoping we could all be together for this conversation. Okay, so we'll wait for Heather, but then I think we should go ahead. This is the first time I have hosted a Google Hangout. I've been involved in them, but I've never hosted one, so far so good. I mean, I've done Hangouts, but not Hangouts on air, I should have said. Are you using it much for your kind of practical purposes?
Probably 4 or 5 times a week.
Is that right?
Yeah, the video feature I use. We're starting to use Slack now more for kind of inter-district or inter-team communications over Google Hangouts, the chat or the Google Chats at least. Slack has it's just nicer. It's easier to you can create various conversations, various threads. It's easier to search. So from a team level, it's much more practical.
Oh, that's interesting. I'd like to look into that. Already, I just love Google Hangouts so much more than some of those kind of proprietary platforms like Adobe Connect. There's just so many layers between you and your audience in a way, you know, and so much setup. And I've just been in ones that have been hosted and produced by somebody else, and so I feel like I'm a few degrees removed from the folks I'm talking to when I use that. So this seems better to me in that regard, for just on the fly kind of getting together.
I would agree. It does have that personal feel to it.
And I just use my phone a lot of times too. I mean, I'll be out and about, and I'll throw up a quick Google Hangout, and so I talk with one of Cindy's colleagues, Jeffrey Kesterson, a lot, and I will just do a quick Google Hangout. I'll be at a building or walking around, and I'll turn video Hangouts on, and if he's available, he answers. If he's not, he doesn't answer.
Yeah.
It's just like a phone call.
Yeah. Yeah. Works really great that way.
Yeah. So our bigger topic today is just how Google Classroom functions, but the other thing I'm thinking ahead to is, in general, how Google tools can be useful. And you know, already you brought up Slack, which is a tool I haven't heard of, so I'm sure there are other tools besides Google, but we're kind of focusing in on Google tools and how they are useful within PBL, within kind of the whole project cycle. And so that's kind of a later conversation I'd hope to have, even if today we just focus on Google Classroom.
Sure.
I'm not sure if you can see the showcase. If you have a showcase button, you can click and see an item that's called PBL Project Timeline. And it's just a photo I have up on Flickr of a slide I made that sort of shows in a very capsule view kind of what project-based learning phases are, and then kind of the milestones along the phases within a single project cycle. So I'm kind of trying to think about Google Classroom as both a kind of a vessel for projects and as a tool for everything you want to have happening within projects. So
certainly
we'll go. Yeah. And I don't know if you well, I guess I should wait. I should wait until we have Cindy with us. I'm sorry, Heather with us.
No, I'm working with some math teachers right now to use Google Classroom as a way to facilitate some of these things. It's not necessarily PBL, but it's kind of along those lines where they're providing some resources and some extended practice on some concepts, and kind of paces them through that, like, hey, here's the concept, here's the idea, where are you going to start with this? And then it creates these conversations, and there's communication between the teacher, and it's more student-driven than it is, grades or assignment-driven. And so, no, I definitely think Classroom has a potential to facilitate a lot of the stuff that you're trying to do with PBL.
I would agree with that. And again, if for no other reason, it provides a forum for that collaboration.
The structures that support that, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, how do we, well, let's do this. Let's just get started with, here's how I thought we'd start. few introductions, and then just find out sort of general use of Google Classroom, like if you're seeing some uptake of Google Classroom and how you might be supporting that, and sort of the most kind of typical uses you're seeing, and then we'd kind of segue from there into maybe some of the capabilities for extended work with kids, like for instance in PBLs. So maybe
Sure.
we ought to just start. Jeremy, do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, just some general uses, like I just explained right now with those math teachers, is kind of the extended learning. I have a social studies teacher now that is setting up his units within Google Classroom. I guess kind of one of the drawbacks with Google Classroom is you can't kind of schedule things out in advance. I mean, one thing he could do is he can go ahead and post a whole bunch of stuff in advance, but based on how he posts it will determine kind of the chronological order of the different comments and stuff. So what he's doing is he's you know, every week he'll post a new topic or new set of resources or whatever, and he's just using it kind of as a way to create conversations. So there's certain sections of his curriculum that he really wants to get to, but because of, you know, a number of reasons, he doesn't have time in the year to get to some of the more in-depth stuff that he likes to do. So he's posting these templates for these conversations for students, and what the students do is then they go and they fill out this template based on the topic or the event or whatever it is, and then the kids will turn that back into him. And one thing that he's thinking of doing is creating a way so that when the kids turn something back in, it'll all go to a single doc, and then the kids have this single doc with all the conversations in it. So, and then the kids can go back to that document and see everybody's different conversations.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. So he sets up a question that everybody's supposed to mull over, and then I was wondering, well, what feature or function of Google Classroom is in use for them to receive that and respond to it?
So he's just creating an assignment essentially, and then attaching a document. So he was looking at just creating a shared document that they all respond to. But in the first phase of this, he wants everyone to respond to an isolated question. He doesn't want everybody to see what everybody else is saying just yet. He wants them to form their own. Yeah, form their own opinions before they start going more in depth. So one thing you can do, so you could share a form, a Google form via Classroom with your students. Right. And on the back end of forms is a spreadsheet essentially. Right. And within those spreadsheets you have various what do they call them? Help me out.
Add-ons.
Add-ons. They have add-ons. And so one of those add-ons is called, why can't I think of the one I'm thinking of?
Is it Autocrat that he's using?
Autocrat, yeah, so there it is, Autocrat. So the kids fill out the form, and there'd be, you know, essentially the kids would get their question, and there's a big paragraph box the kids fill out. Well, what he can do then is he can send all those kids' responses to one document, and then the kids will have access to that one document. And so when he says, okay, everybody's turned them in, I'm going to ask you to open up the document, and I want you guys to go back and look at a handful of your peers' responses. And now you're going to start to formulate, you know, an extended response. And so it's a lot of this is self-guided the conversations that the kids would get their question, and there's a big paragraph. So they have to happen with his his guidance. It just kind of starts going, and all those kids respond to the different, and then the kids will have access here and there on. And so when he says, okay, everybody's turned them in, ask to open up the document, I want you to go back and look at a handful of your peers' responses, and now you're going to start to formulate, you know, an extended response. So we're on a delay here.
Yeah, I think it's Heather's room is feeding back.
Google Hangout to help somebody learn how to use Google Classroom. We just thought it might be interesting to you to see how this email went out today from this Jane Krause, and she said,
sorry, I'm multitasking.
Heather responded, Jeremy responded, other people responded.
So Virginia's trying to fill in the group here on because we're watching the Hangout, and then I just logged back into it as a participant.
Okay. Yeah, we were having some kind of feedback problem, but it looks better. It sounds better now.
Okay, let me know because we can turn our
That's
It'll
volume.
just help
And
if we
welcome
mute
everybody.
mics.
We're not
until you're
seeing the
talking.
whole crew, but that's great. Jeremy, just to kind of wrap up your that one little element you were talking about, that you had an add-on that went to forms, or was it to spreadsheet that was able to kind of sort that?
So the add-on is tied to the spreadsheet that's connected to the form. So every form you create automatically creates a sheet that populates all your answers.
And what was the add-on called?
Autocrat?
We're not
Autocrat.
participating in it. Let me know because we can.
Okay.
So we
See if we can
participate.
keep
I
going.
think she'd like the participation piece.
That's great. Jeremy,
Can we do that?
Kind of wrap up
Heather, is it possible for you guys to mute your mic?
Unless I put my computer.
Heather?
There you go. I muted Heather for now.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeremy.
So yeah, so that add-on is called Autocrat, and it ties into the Google Sheet that is connected to the form. But Autocrat's really cool because you can export to a whole bunch of things. You can export it to another Google Sheet. You can export it to a group of slides, or you can export it to a document. And what that will allow is then you have this running document of all the kids' responses, and you can share that based on whatever schedule you have going with your classroom. So then, you know, you can add access to allow students to begin to further their own conversations. Or another idea, I mean, if you want to keep it really simple, just create an announcement in Google Classroom and let kids comment on it, just like they're commenting on a Facebook post or something like that. And that's a simple way of doing it.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice introductory way to do that, and especially if you post maybe some two differing opinions and then letting kids to comment on those and provide their own perspective.
Could you imagine using that announcements feature to have kids use it as kind of an exit slip or that kind of function?
Certainly. Yeah, I mean, it's
certainly.
If you have the function turned on, kids can create their own posts. You don't even have to create an announcement. You can have kids just add posts independently. Another nice thing, though, is when you create an assignment or an announcement, kids can reply back to you privately. And so you can allow that as well. So if you just want, okay, here's your exit ticket, here's the question, you make an assignment, but I want your comments to be just to me, not to the whole group, you can also have that available so all the content's not all getting shared out at once.
I like that. I mean, there's that tension in any classroom, really, especially where there's group work with, am I assessing what's going on for the group, or am I learning what's going on with the individual within the group? And so I like that kind of that it sounds like some agility in being able to adjust to, whether you're going to have group responses or individual responses. That sounds great. One of the things you said earlier about setting up, for instance, a unit of instruction or a PBL, you said that you were challenged because of having to, I wasn't sure if you meant because you said you could put in a series of assignments. But then you do that in advance and then it's not adjustable, or you can do those on the fly. The reason that resonated with me is I used Edmodo last summer for a pre-service class at the U of O, and I was frustrated with how hardwired it was, where I had to have everything blocked out on a schedule in advance, and it was really hard to change. And so I wondered if you'd talk just a little bit about the setting up of the unit of instruction or the PBL.
So something to keep in mind with Google Classroom is that it's not necessarily meant to be a LMS.
Okay.
It is more of just a content delivery tool. It's a couple of my colleagues have coined it as a DMS, a document management system.
Okay.
And with a few extra features, the commenting, kids can talk to each other and stuff on it. But what it doesn't allow is for you to schedule the release of assignments or announcements. Okay. And so if you were to post a whole bunch of stuff, what it is the newest post, announcement, comment, or whatever it is, always goes at the top. Right. So if you were to post a whole bunch of stuff for the year, yeah, the the assignment you want them to do first might be at the top, but then all the stuff later on that you want to happen in March, April, May is going to be way, way, way down on that list. And so
Right,
that
so-
creates some
Necessarily
issues
sort
there.
things. It's more organized by time that it was put in. You couldn't, for instance, sort by name of
Correct.
an assignment and then
No.
have an O1, O2, you know, like that numbering in the name to organize it. You can't
No,
do-
it's
Okay.
it's all chronological based on when you post it.
All right.
Right. So so an easy way that I have been describing it to teachers that are interested is it functions much like a blog.
Mhm.
And when you put
Yep.
it in, that's when you see it.
Okay.
That's a perfect explanation.
Great. Great.
So Jane, we have we have our technical difficulties worked out now. I have the whole group here watching this, but you can't see them because I don't have a cord that will allow me to turn my computer around to face them. It's too short.
Okay.
But I have about 20 folks here who have. How many of you have experience with Google Classroom? It looks like about maybe 6 or 7 of us do.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's valuable for them to kind of give you any little bits and pieces about how they use it.
Yeah, can I, if I'm Jeremy and Cindy, you're going to have to bear with me as I kind of describe again what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
So I'm Jean, and I was a teacher in 4J school district, and in Southern Oregon I taught in District 6, and I've been around education for a long time and doing a lot of work around project-based learning, and just recently a pal and I from Utah are putting together a small book for Corwin that's focused on the intersections between project-based learning and Google tools. And so one of the chapters in this little book we're writing is on how you can use the functions of Google Classroom in support of project management within PBL. And so I'm not sure if you can see this in the showcase link, but I've got an item in there that shows a PBL project timeline and kind of shows the phases within a project and then the kind of the milestones along those phases, which are times where there might be need for a tool or some kind of formative assessment or some sort of activity that conceivably could be supported by using kind of this content delivery tool as we're talking about it, so that we could use Google Classroom as kind of a vessel and structuring for its structuring functions for a PBL. And so Jeremy's just been talking about some of the features that he's felt are useful, and Cindy's chimed in a little bit. So we're kind of keeping the focus on maybe longer term units of study like a PBL, maybe where you're looking at group work but you're also wanting to understand what's going on for individuals. So those are some of the those are kind of the constraints on our conversation right now, is kind of thinking about that scenario. So anything people want to contribute would be great. Hey, JP. Hey, JP. Thanks for joining us.
Alright. I might.
Yeah, we're going to mute you until you're ready to talk. I think Jeremy muted you because you've got some feedback going on there with I see you might be putting some headphones on. So I can unmute you. Heather, it looked like you maybe had something you wanted to contribute.
Heather, you might need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I can't do it.
Oh, there we go. Oh, there we go.
I just muted myself.
Yeah, we've got 3 microphones going on, so we're getting massive feedback. Yeah. Yeah.
I can't because
Okay, this is, I think, what we're going to do to make this work better. I think JP is going to go into another room, and we're just going to pull this out of the group because it's not working with the setup that we have. So JP and I will join you. He's going to join you right now, and I'll join you in a minute.
Okay.
And I think that's the easiest thing for us to do right now. So we thought we could make this work, but it doesn't look like it's going to. So. It is. It's a great thing to do for us as, to problem solve and troubleshoot, but it's not the best use of your time, I don't think.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All
Well,
right.
I'm hoping we're going to get together more than once. It would be in a perfect world. So.
All right. Well, I will see you in a few minutes.
All right. So let's just continue. So I like how you're thinking of these different ways of getting around some of the shortcomings, maybe like having just everybody have a shareable doc at certain points. I think that's pretty neat. What other kinds of functions of the so here's, I guess this is one of my questions, is I can't get into Google Classroom because I don't have a Google Apps for Education account that I'm affiliated with. I don't know if that's something that somebody could invite me to for just a little tour sometime, but I can't really see even the interface, what kids see, what teachers see, and so I wonder if anybody want to describe that and how that's working for teachers, how they're taking to it, and whether they're getting up to speed pretty fast, and how they're using it.
So I can speak to that. LMSs in general within Salem-Keizer are a fairly new concept, and as we're rolling out several one-to-one programs, teachers are looking for some way to be able to disseminate content and allow for that collaborative learning environment. And so as they look at different things, they're pretty intimidated by some of the options that are available to them. But for the ease that Google Classroom provides, they feel like it's approachable. It doesn't have as many bells and whistles. And again, as Jeremy described, it is a DMS, and so I'm very clear to describe that to them. But it's very basic to set up. I put my name in, I get to say what my class is, and then I get to give out an access code that my students, once they are logged into their Google account, can go ahead and add in that access code, and they're instantly a part of that class. So in terms of being able for teachers to set it up, it's a pretty basic process, and it's not quite. So again, as I've worked with other teachers using different LMSs, some of them require hours and frankly days to set up because you've built this unit which transcribes to this unit and so forth. And so with a very basic blog style format, I can do one assignment. I know what's coming up next, and when I'm ready, I'll add that in and so forth. So again, it creates a very approachable environment especially for those teachers that are very new to LMSs in general.
And the other thing I'd like to kind of contrast it with is Google Sites. I don't know if your teachers have much familiarity or use of that, but I've thought that's been a pretty reasonable, again, kind of a vessel and a structuring system for units of study. And I don't know if you've got people who are using sites and they're using them in conjunction with Google Classroom, or if you're seeing that they're kind of hybrids or some kind of combination of tools that work together.
So I feel like I get to speak about two very distinctly different districts, and so I'm going to talk about the Albany School District specifically, and they are very, very comfortable with sites and very comfortable with LMS, and I see them using sites differently than a standard LMS. So in sites, they're going to put every single assignment they will ever give to students, and they've categorized them and so forth, versus a Google Classroom where they're going to just basically let students incrementally access the content that they're putting forward. So in a sense, they're stepping them through the content versus here's all of it and now I want you to go find.
That's a good distinction.
And I would chime in as well. So I teach 7th and 8th grade language arts, and I've always had, I kind of maintained a website, which thematically I would put on, as a unit went, put on resources, and also share, give students a way to access past assignments and, current things and things like that. What I like about Google Classroom is that it it's kind of what Cindy said, where you roll things out at once. You know, you can post an assignment, you can post a handful of resources with the assignment, and it really gets kids. I think kids that aren't used to looking at, you know, when you post a site and you've got a ton of information on there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a totally different navigation experience for a student than saying, here's an assignment, here's some resources that I want you to consider, and you know, you can embed, you know, videos and documents and all the things that you would. You have all the Google
Mm-hmm.
integration, but it's all in one place, and it limits. It's that limiting thing, you know. It limits what they have access to. Is that a good thing? You know, in a lot of cases, I think it is. And then you can roll things out. You know, there are definite drawbacks. Like it's, you know, it's like a blog. So if you want to get to something that was earlier, it's, you know, it's not like you go to that page and click on it, or find the tab on the site and click on it. You have to scroll down to find it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know.
Right, and that's not searchable either. And
Yeah.
maybe that'll be a component that's coming, but at this point it's not.
And are you able, like in sites, to be able to copy an instance of a classroom? I'm thinking, Cindy, I think you work with teachers who, I think you were the person who said you had a great third grade example. Is that right?
I don't know that was me.
Oh, okay.
I
was thinking you were describing, you know, a teacher, all they have to do is say, this is me and this is my class, and then
right.
they're kind of ready to go. But if they've got like 4 preps.
Right, and so again, what I'm finding is it's those secondary teachers that, you know, frankly, they have those 4 preps, so they need something basic, they need something simple, and they want to go ahead and just roll that out very quickly. So again, one-to-one is fairly new for us in Salem-Keizer, so the time and the development of that isn't as long-standing, and so stepping them into that in a very systematic, approachable manner has been important. Mm-hmm. They may go to something more, I don't want to use the word advanced, but a little more full-featured, say in the fall after they're more comfortable with the process, but at this point, Google Classroom is a really tangible way for them to start.
Would anybody else like to talk about kind of the instances of, for instance, do you have one Google Classroom and it serves for all of your classes, or you have a different Google Classroom environment for each of their classes?
So Jane, I'm going to share my screen with you here so you can see what Classroom looks like.
Great.
Can you see it all right?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to move my Hangout screen to another window so I can also see what I'm doing here. So these are multiple instances. Most of them are just kind of tests that I've worked on. So I'm going to go in here to this test classroom we made. And so essentially, this is what it sort of looks like. So here's an assignment post. It shows you who's turned in their work, who hasn't turned in their work. But what I've encouraged teachers to do is create a separate instance for each one of their sections. Now, if it's an elementary classroom, I think it might be a little too convoluted to have, you know, a math one, a language arts one, a science one, a social studies one. I think that might be too much. But for high school and secondary, it just makes sense for, you know, for a math teacher, even though he might teach the same algebra class 2 or 3 times, to create separate ones. But what you can do is within this, you can actually, so if I were to create a new assignment here, if you look right here where my cursor is, can you see that? Mm-hmm. When you click on that, I can actually select this assignment to post to multiple classrooms that I've created. So I don't have to go back and repost it to each one. So I might have 3 sections of the same Algebra 2 class, but I can actually post the same assignments to every class from just one classroom. So I'm not doing it in triplicate. I'm not doing it in every instance. I'm just doing it in one, but it's posting to all the rest. So that's a nice feature, especially for our secondary teachers that have multiple preps at the same section or whatever.
And those things that you're ready to click on there, are those documents or are those posts or?
Right here, these are other classrooms.
Okay. Okay.
So this right here, Camp 9 PD, Technology, Skill, Scope, and Sequence, and Board Meetings. Those are all separate classrooms that I've created.
So that post up above, that you're going to decide where that goes to.
Correct.
Okay.
I could send this post to all 3 of them if I wanted to.
I see. Mm-hmm.
So that helps if you're teaching, Algebra 2 3 times during the day. You can post to the same class, or you can post the same assignment to all 3 classrooms without having to go into all 3 classrooms.
So taking this kind of into, let's imagine that we're just talking about one class, and it's a PBL class that's got 6 different groups are operating. Would you be able to set up those separate instances as if they were groups?
Like within the same classroom?
Yeah.
No, not necessarily. It's not like Edmodo where you could have multiple groups within one classroom kind of setting. In that case, if you're trying to have 3 separate or 6 separate groups or whatever, you might want to have a classroom for each one of those groups. And then you can post common assignments or common reminders from just one of them by choosing, by selecting each one along the way.
Okay, so it's just one level up from that Camp 9 page when you showed us those different instances.
Right,
you
so if I
just
go back,
have each of those be a group.
Yeah, so if I come back here, you could have each of these be a separate PBL group.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in one of them, you'll be able to select you can select all of them if you wanted to post a common announcement or a common assignment to all of them at once.
I can see how this would work really well for a differentiated experience, so one group needs it and 2 others do too, but the 3 and 4 don't, and you're going to do something different for them. I like it.
And I might chime in. I think that you can, in most environments, you're going to provide differentiated instruction. And it's more pronounced when you do PBL. But within, and I've got my screen share up here. So this is, this is an active. This is 7th period language arts, 7th and 8th grade. And I think you can post a common assignment. You can, students can submit. When they go to submit something, they can attach, documents to it. So you could have, in a project-based environment, if you have, kind of the first check-in, and you present it as groups within your designated roles. This is going to be your first chance to share. You can have people post different documents to the same assignment.
And how does that look on the back end for you? Do you just see something like Google Drive where everything flows in, or do you have to go into the classroom environment and poke around in each of the?
So it's nice, and I'll show it to you here. So this is I'll scroll down. So this is an essay that was was due 2 days ago, and what you can see on here, and so this is the back side of it, is that I had posted a link or a slideshow that I'd made on creating introductions. I posted a Google Doc that I shared in class on effective formulas for body paragraphs. I posted a link online for writing a good conclusion. And then I have their scoring guide, which is also a Google Doc. So all these things are together. On the student side, they see all of those, but they also have a little button that says open, and it goes to their specific document. So then when they turn it in, I can look up here on the upper right, and you see the 28 done and the 6 not done. Do you see those? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's who's got what. And if I click on, say, the 28. My internet's a little bit of lag here. So now what I get is I get a screen with the student work. Let's pick someone I haven't graded. So this one right here, I can open it up specifically. I can see everything that they've submitted. And so what's nice about Google Classroom is when you set up an assignment and you enter a doc and you say give a copy to every kid, it pushes it out to them. And it also attaches their name to it. So, Dragon Wings Essay Final, this is Christian Bartlett. The next student, it's going to be Dragon Wings Essay Final, Carson Anderson. So it goes, their name is automatically attached and it goes in. And then here's their document. So, before where, we would have students, initially it was kind of like, students would create a document and they'd share it with you. And then when you wanted to find it, you'd have to type their name into the sharing pane in Google Drive. That evolved to, create a Google form, and they'd essentially share and paste the URL into the form, and then you'd have all of those in one place, and then you could open them up. But there were still the sharing issues. If a student didn't set it up for you to view or comment, you couldn't look at it. When they do it in Google Classroom, Classroom manages that for you. One thing that I really like is when a student submits, it freezes their editing privileges. So, once they submit it, their document is a static document until you give it back to them or they unsubmit it. But then here's the student's essay. And so I use, especially with student writing, there's a couple of add-ons that I use aggressively. One of them is Kaizena Mini, which Cindy shared with me last summer, which allows to provide voice feedback. And then another one that I've gone whole hog on is Gubrick, which essentially allows, it facilitates for me entering, I can post a rubric in Google Sheets, and it'll pull it up for the student, and it'll pull up their essay and post the rubric and allow me to give voice comments. And then when I return it, and I'll show this to you in another student's essay, when the essay goes back to them, their rubric is pasted at the bottom of their essay, and it emails it to them. So it's a seamless thing for me, and provides a lot of immediate and I think very actionable feedback for them.
Yeah, it seems like that must come together pretty fast for any one assignment.
Yeah.
Just all those different elements of the voice and the rubric associated with it and all that. It's all kind of wired for that. That's pretty neat. So when you showed that one student's work as having come in late, apparently when you make an assignment, you can associate a due date with it, right? And anything beyond it shows up as late. Is that how that works?
You can associate a due date and a due time. So for different class periods throughout the day, I mean, you can specify it down to the minute if you want. When I've done trainings in my district and kind of around Southern Oregon on this stuff, the thing that there are the people for whom you're preaching to the choir, and then there are the people who and people who are already going to use it. It's great that you showed them. Really, if we're going to encourage more people to get involved with ed tech, they have to see an immediate benefit for them as a teacher. And so, kind of the tagline is efficient for teachers, high impact and effective for kids. And I would say I was a skeptical adopter of Google Classroom early on, but I really do see a way it streamlines the teacher experience, and I think it magnifies the power of effective instruction for students.
Well, that's a great testimonial because I think it fits in line with some of the concerns teachers express when we talk about project-based learning. They say, oh, but there's so many moving parts and so much to track, and that presents a big challenge for me. And so I think just what you said about the efficiencies afforded the teacher and the coherence that's it's presented in a coherent way to kids, it's got to help.
Yeah. Well, and it's when I put it out, I looked at it at the beginning of the year and thought, yeah, there's not enough here for me really to go for this. I kind of like what I'm doing already. And then I came back to it and I said, all right, I'm going to have students submit an assignment the traditional way, where they paste the URL onto a Google form. But I'm also going to create.
I'm sorry, but that's just so funny that you call that the traditional way, where that's that's very 22nd century for some teachers. But go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No. I mean, I've been in an environment for a couple of years where for every big assignment, nothing gets printed. But so here's this. I've got a lag on the internet, but you can see the scoring guide that it brings up. And what Gubrick does, which is nice, is that it highlights this student went and highlighted everything, and it shouldn't be this way, but it will shade the box of the score that they got. So if you look at their introduction, it says the score was a 7, and then the 7 box is shaded. Kind of a neat thing. So when I went to roll it out after that, I said, okay, I'm going to create one class in Google Classroom, and I'm going to have two. I just picked a random class period, and I had students submit the same assignment concurrently. So I showed them, they entered into Google Classroom, they put in the code, and they submitted the assignment. And so then I had them side by side, and I was able to compare. And at that point, I quickly realized, like, this is going to be a lot more efficient than what I'm doing. If you're trying to encourage other people to get involved, don't push it as we need to do a big whole-scale rollout, or you need to pick one class, pick one assignment, try it out, and then you'll be able to decide where you want to go from there.
So do you think that having experience using Google Apps for Education is a precursor for, is it a precondition for getting involved in Google Classroom, or do you think somebody could go from no experience with Google Apps to using Google Classroom?
I think an initial understanding of Google Apps and what it can do will only enhance the teacher's ability to use Google Classroom. And frankly, because the students are going to have to be using Google Apps, they're going to have to know a little bit to be able to help students if they run into any issues and so forth. So again, just even if it's a basic understanding, I think that would definitely be of benefit.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And I think, a number of teachers in my building will say, well, I use Microsoft Office, and so, why should I do this when I just have to upload all of my documents? And it's true, they can't upload their documents, and it's an extra step. What they lose in that is that they're uploading static documents, and if they make changes, they have to upload the new change. So it's certainly easier for people who are already comfortable with Google Docs. But from a student standpoint, it's the joke that I make with kids is that there are six people in our building who don't have websites, and they're all teachers. Because all of our students build them, and about half of our teachers do. So it's it's one of these things where you can stay in your corner and say, oh, I'm not going to do that, and at a point the world has passed you by.
Mm-hmm.
So Jane, I thought maybe it would be helpful. I'm just coming out of the classroom, and I am a huge PBL proponent, and I ran a full-featured LMS alongside of Google Classroom just to see effectively how well those work together, or what could one do better than the other, and it was really fascinating, honestly. One particular class, their job was multimedia, and they were doing some pretty cool stuff, sound, picture, movie editing, and then that blossomed into reporting about local history, and that we partnered with the Downtown Association of the town that I worked in at that point. And so with Google Classroom, and of course I could have done this with another LMS, they only printed once, and they printed, and again, it's not about being paperless, but it was about the type of work that they were doing. And they only printed once because the Downtown Association needed something to hang in business windows. That was the essence of that. So again, it was an interesting comparison between the two. Discussions were a little bit trickier, and Jeremy described one way around that. But in terms of other more full-featured LMSs, that was a little easier to do. In terms of
Can you tell me what you were using, what you were comparing it with?
I was comparing it with Schoology.
Uh-huh.
So, individual units, I could pre-populate those. I could set them up into not exactly a linear, but certainly a little bit more systematic approach versus, and then hide those from the students. Or maybe I'd set up resources and not end up needing them because students didn't need them, and so forth. Bye, Jeremy.
Thank you, Jeremy.
And then in Google Classroom, of course, the peer editing, and JP mentioned Kaizena. That is one of my very favorite editing tools to use with students, and the peer editing that came out of being able to use that tool was really impacting. So long before, I was the last person to see that assignment. And they had much interaction with their peers before I ever saw it. And the success rate, I think, was really pretty impressive. So again, I think it also depends on what kind of learning are you needing them to do. And what, again, all of the classes that I taught, and I had 5 preps, all of those classes were all project-based, but they were different in what I was asking students to do, as well as what students needed to produce and how they needed to interact with each other. So again, Google Classroom offered some really good opportunities, but it also had some limitations in terms of, and I had to do some workarounds in order to kind of bring out the important things that I felt like I needed to emphasize with students.
Yeah, and it sounds like you have all really dug into the add-ons, and I've written down 3 that you mentioned so far. Do you know of a good source for just a kind of a directory of Google Classroom add-ons that are particularly useful for particularly larger units of study beyond these 3?
You know, a Flubberoo is a nice kind of go-to that a lot of teachers use. And Flubberoo is one where it's a form, kids submit their answers, and then it grades the form. And if it's a free response kind of situation, then obviously the teacher needs to go back and take a look at those answers more specifically. So it gives a quick grade and a quick check-in. So that's nice if you're talking about multiple students, if you're only dealing with multiple choice, as well as more basic content understanding.
And so when you ran across that as an add-on, what is your source of add-ons that work for you? Do you just hear them from the other people on your team, or is there some source that you could point me to?
Unfortunately, no, not really.
Okay.
It's one of those things where people are just consistently, they're going out and saying, gee, I wonder if there's a tool that does. And then typically people are looking in the add-ons with Google Documents first, and then kind of branching out from there. So for example, GMath is one that a lot of teachers, math-specific teachers, are using because they needed a calculator. They needed a graphing calculator for students, and they don't have them. So again, I think need precipitated the desire to look.
And so I'm thinking back to Google Sites, which is really nice because of all the embeddable features. Do you have some of that same functionality in Google Classroom, for instance? I would think in a project-based classroom it would be really important to have a calendar that people can see all the time.
Right, and so people have done some work around. So I was talking to a teacher even just this week who said that the way she embedded her calendar is in the section where it says about the classroom, she just put a link to the class to the specific calendar itself. So again, it's a workaround, and Google Classroom has evolved a lot in the 8 months, 7 months that it's been around, and so I would suspect that will be something that will be added on here shortly. Another piece, now this is a downside, is that teachers can't, once they have chosen to be a teacher in a Google Classroom, they can't be a student anywhere else. So that's an issue that teachers are running into because they wanted to check it out, and so they said, oh, I want to be a student. And then they went, wait, I can't be a student and then try to open my own classroom. It just doesn't work. So that's something that has to be dealt with at a district level to kind of help remediate that issue. But it is definitely an issue.
So all the students in a Google Apps for Education district have a generated email, right, under that domain?
Correct.
And that's the way that, so what I was thinking a teacher's workaround could be is that they make up their own separate Gmail account, but they probably wouldn't be able to do that in an...
You have to be in the domain in order to be in the class.
Okay.
So hence your comment earlier about not being able to get into one or set one up.
Yeah.
So again, it's something that I can see in the future. There will be a professional development option, so there'll be one level higher than a teacher, and then that administrator can have teachers in a classroom, and then those teachers can see the student function behind it.
Mm-hmm. I get it. Any other? Jeremy stepped off to take a call, and JP had to head out. I don't know if we have Heather with us at all, but anything more for the good of the order? What kinds of things haven't I asked that I should have by now?
So, again, from a student perspective, there is a section where they can see upcoming assignments, and they're at the beginning of their class page. It says upcoming assignments and when they're specifically due. They'll have to scroll down in order to see those. And that was one thing that I noticed with students, is that if I had a project that took 6 weeks to get done, and there were lots of little projects before that, they often forgot the 6th-week project. They just didn't track it.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's with the reminders, I think that's a help, but also it does require some more significant adult involvement for them to be able to track all of that.
Could you see having some parallel, some other platform working with this, or maybe a Google Sites working with it, so it's sort of like a companion portal for all those different functions that Google Classroom doesn't have right now? Could you see working kind of parallel?
Yeah.
Or would that be complicated for kids? Or
I think it would be complex for kids in general. But if you want to talk more specifically about how two LMS, well, DMS and an LMS work together, Heather would be the one to talk to about that. She is running Google Classroom right alongside Schoology. I would, anyway, so she would be able to talk more specifically about how those two kind of play into each other and how she's tracking that. There is, from a teacher standpoint, you can sort students by first name, by last name. You can look at them and see what assignments they're turning in and see a general trend, but you're not going to be able to see like a grading book or something like that. But an awful lot of districts right now are providing that online resource, so that may or may not be an issue. But again, the sorting. In September, you could only sort by first name, which was challenging. But that function turned around pretty quickly, and I think it was mid-October before that sort function was available.
Mm-hmm. So are you saying there isn't a grade book associated with Google Classroom?
There is not.
Okay.
You can look at a specific assignment and see how students have done individually, but there is no assignment 1, assignment 2, assignment 3, all side by side,
mm-hmm.
In a spreadsheet kind of format.
Okay. Well, I'm sure there are a lot of things that I still don't know, and without really being able to navigate inside the environment and all, it's a little challenging for me. But I've read lots and lots of descriptions of the features of Google Classroom. There's a lot of people, top 10 things you ought to know about it and all. But it's sure helpful just to talk to people who are in the field and getting people geared up. And so I'm really happy to talk with you. I don't know if there are any parting words or questions that we should raise, but I really appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely, Jane, and I appreciate getting a chance to talk with you and just and listen to a little bit about what you're doing. It sounds like some good stuff.
Well, thank you. And what I would love to do is propose another chat in a while where we just kind of go wild with apps that you think would be particularly useful for PBL. I love that you have that experience as a teacher yourself, so you know the challenges and the rewards of operating that way. And so I bet you have a lot of great ideas about tools, not just Google tools, but I'd love to check in again.
Yeah, no, I'd be very willing to visit with you, and at that point, if you're interested in having some students involved in that conversation, I might be able to rustle up a few.
Wouldn't that be fun? That'd be
you
great.
could hear their perspective as well.
Yeah, that'd be really great. I'd appreciate that. And I'd love to see a little showcase of their projects. It sounds like you've gotten a lot of great. Maybe do you have a website that's got your multimedia project and other projects? You know, do they have a face to the world?
They absolutely have a face to the world, but I have changed districts, and that class has finished, and so although that class is done, I can't guarantee what has happened with the project since I have left.
Yeah, they might have just scrubbed your whole identity.
It could have.
Well, thanks a lot. I think we'll call it a day. And,
all right, sounds good.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely, and I hope you have a great day, Jane.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.